Hey everybody, welcome to the CER practice test. This video is the answer key. So if you've been absent or if you were absent, you can always watch this to catch up on what we missed. But also as you finish the practice test, you can look over the video to make sure you did a really nice job, that you know what you're doing. So, is water food? So remember, CER, you shouldn't have more than 6 sentences. A lot of times you're going to have 5 sentences. Theoretically, you might have less, but in most cases, you're going to have at least 5, but you really shouldn't exceed 6. You might if you have a lot of evidence and you need to go beyond to 3, but that should be pretty rare. So here's our CER. What we're going to do, it's going to tell you that look at the background information. You need to base your CER test on this food label. Always when you're taking CERs, it's a writing process. I want to see if you can do 2 things. 1, if you can interpret data. And here you're going to have to interpret a food label. And 2, it's a writing test. So I'm going to see if you can write your answers out in a coherent way where it makes sense. So here it is. The question is water food? So as you answer, is water food, you want to make sure you answer the sentence. It's 1 sentence, not 2, not 3, just 1. You want to have enough information for it to be correct, but you don't want to have too much information. You need to go beyond yes or no, because it would be really easy to say, is water food? No. Is water food? Yes. You need to go beyond that. So what would a really good proficient answer be? You could say no, comma, water is not food. That's all right. I'd simplify it even more and say water is not food. This one's a little tricky because if you forget that comma, then it's no, water is not food. It really doesn't make a lot of sense. So could you have it? This is even easier, 4 words. So how could you get an advanced answer out of it? You might say water is not food because it has no fat, carbs, or proteins. You're showing that next level of understanding. You're showing already that you understand this food label. You may have already, and I suggest that you do this sometimes, I would suggest sometimes you backtrack before you start and you look at the scientific principles. Because a lot of times the scientific principles will give you the answer. It says food contains substances like protein, fat, sugar, and starch. All right? So, next, evidence. Again, you should have some evidence here. You have to have evidence here, otherwise you don't get credit for it. You should have at least 2 pieces of evidence, 2 sentences, sometimes 3 if you want advanced. But yet, this is very fluid, and I'll explain why in just a little bit. So here's a good proficient answer. Water has 0% fat, water has 0% protein, water has 0% carbs. So a lot of times when we were in class, I said, if you have that 3rd sentence, that's advanced. In this case, it wouldn't be. You're just telling me the basics. However, you could do this. If you had water has 0% fat, comma, protein, comma, and carbs, honestly, I would be fine with that because you said they have 0% fat, protein, and carbs, and those are the biggies. Advanced, this is where, again, you're starting to show me some knowledge beyond what you have here. And this is understanding that carbs really are sugars and starches, because this is what we talked about in the lessons. We didn't test for carbs per se. We tested for sugar and we tested for starch. So getting to the last part of the CER, this is the reasoning. The reasoning has 2 sentences. Sentence 5 is your scientific principle. You want to choose a scientific principle that proves you are right or supports your claim. We all started out in the same way. In science, we know. Then state your claim. Now, you might have to do a little wordsmithing to make sure that it sounds right. And then sentence 6 is 2 parts. First, summarize the evidence, and then you restate your claim. And you separate the 2 parts with the word therefore. So here's a proficient answer. In science, we know that food contains substances like protein, fat, sugar, and starch. So again, start out in science, we know, and then I copied and pasted this down there, but I had to kind of tweak it a little bit just to make sure it makes sense. I added the word that. Could we say in science we know food contains substances like protein, fat, sugar, and starch? Absolutely. So now summarize the evidence. Water has 0% of these. So this is where some people say, what do you mean 0% of what? Well, substances like protein, fat, sugar, and starch. It's right there. So water has 0% of these, therefore water is not food. And this is your claim. What would an advanced answer look like? In science, we know that food contains substances like protein, fat, sugar, and starch. Same as above. The scientific principle is the scientific principle. Sometimes you can shorten it up. Sometimes you can summarize it. But in this case, it's pretty straightforward. Now, water has 0% protein, fat, or carbs. So this is where you're showing that little extra bit of understanding. You might be saying, well, what do you mean carbs? Well, the food label has carbs. It doesn't have sugar or starches. It says carbs. So here it's telling me that you understand that carbs are sugar or starch, comma. So then, summarize or restate your claim, comma. Therefore, water is not food. So if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, if you want me to look over any parts of your CER, make sure you let me know before the test. Thanks. Bye.